I'm a huge Tesla fan, Tesla shareholder, but I think this recent tweet from Elon, where he talked about how autopilot makes your car 10 times less chance of having an accident than an average vehicle, I think it's misleading and probably over exaggerates how safe autopilot truly is. To be clear, I really believe that Teslas are safer, and I know that they're a safer vehicle than the average vehicle, especially after a crash. And I would say even before a crash, that's true as well in their safety features that help prevent crashes, such as autopilot. But this kind of comparison that Elon does here, and the way Tesla compares their autopilot engagement relative to average miles of crashes per miles, I think is an apples to oranges comparison. And here's why. I'm going to break this down in this video. So again, Elon tweeted this out. Tesla with autopilot engaged now approaching 10 times lower chance of accident than an average vehicle. And this is from their their accident report that just came out. In the first quarter, we registered one accident for 4.19 million miles driven, in which those had autopilot engaged. For those driving without autopilot with their active safety features, it was one per every 2 million miles. And just driving a Tesla, it was about every one for every 978,000 with none of the active features or active safety features engaged. And then relative to the NHTSA's most recent data from the US, it's about one automobile crash every 484,000 miles. So it sounds really fantastic. There's even a nice graph here that was done on Inside EVs. Shout out to them. And they show this sort of national average line here in miles driven by an accident. So the higher amount of miles you can go per accident, the more safe you're getting. And of course, these lines, which are just Teslas, this is autopilot, no autopilot, but safety features, and this is autopilot, get safer as you go up. And of course, there's also a lot more variance in these lines because there's less data, so the data can fluctuate more versus a national average, which is taking in a lot more data. So they're saying that, you're 10 times safer, less chance per mile autopilot versus this. And if you just look at the numbers, yeah, that seems reasonable, and wow, that's exciting, that's amazing, like that's so much safer, 10 times more safe. But I really think this is misleading, apple to oranges comparison. Here's why. Because these national statistics, you look up the national statistics, they and you can bring these up here. I did kind of double check their own numbers, at least from 2008. There might be more recent data than this, but again, this data is fairly steady state since you're looking at such a wide, large amount of data for that. You can look at these statistics pretty easily, and from the NHTSA's website, you can look up all police-reported motor vehicle traffic crashes. You get a total there, and then you can look at vehicle miles traveled. So this total vehicle miles traveled in millions of miles, 3 million miles. You plug in those two numbers, you do your math. Over here we have that, your miles traveled, how many police reported crashes there were, and then a miles per crash, you get about 480 some thousand. It's in the ballpark. Again, I'm not sure if they used 2018 or there was even more recent data that they were using, but it's somewhere in that range. So that makes sense, but the problem is these miles that the police are reporting and are accumulating miles driven on all vehicles driven are going to be all kinds of miles. It's going to include driving back roads, driving in the city, driving on the highway. But what Tesla is comparing, especially with autopilot enabled, is they're comparing it's mostly going to be just highway miles. I wish there was data on highway miles, accidents per highway miles on a national level, because that would be a much clearer comparison between autopilot and that. But because these NHTSA miles are all miles, I think by their very nature, highway miles, you're driving much faster on a highway. You're driving 60, 70 miles an hour. You're going to go 60, 70 miles in an hour. and then if your chance of accident per mile is going to be less than driving around a city where you might have a fender bender and you're slowly driving bumper to bumper traffic, in a downtown, getting home from work, and you have an accident. So it's misleading to compare these two data points back and forth, because your autopilot miles are by their nature mostly going to just be highway miles. If I was a regulator, I wouldn't be impressed by this kind of data comparison. Even when you try and project this out further beyond just autopilot, but then to full self-driving beta, I wouldn't be impressed simply with this kind of apples to oranges comparison. Ideally, to really prove the safety of any system, such as autopilot, such as eventually full self-driving beta, you're not just going to want to know that for the total miles, it's safer than the national average of total miles, but you'd want to somehow kind of make the data more granular by different segments. So you'd have maybe highway miles at a certain speed. Maybe you bridge the data or segment the data by different speeds traveled. So miles where your average speed over a section of roadway is 30 miles per hour or less, and then between 30 and 45 miles per hour, and then 45 and 70 or 80 miles per hour is maybe another sort of highway segment and beyond. So somehow making the data more granular, more segmented, and then if you could actually compare somehow a national average relative for each segment versus what for example, autopilot could do or what full self-driving beta could do, I think that's, as a regulator, what I would want to see, or somehow see some kind of comparison. Because people talk about full self-driving and they talk about the march of nines, that you're going 99.99999% safe, but really if you're 99.999999999 safe driving on a highway, but in another condition, say you can even have further breakdown, say snowy highway, you're actually only 98% safe per on a time average or a miles average. It's not going to be very safe, and you're going to have fatalities very, very quickly. So in my mind as a regulator, you're going to want to see more segments of data, and you're going to want to see 99.9999999 available in every segment. This is why I think full self-driving is going to be rolled out as well. I think it's going to be rolled out in sort of a different by roadways. So maybe in a Phoenix geographed area, first of all, it's all the roads are checked off. There can be proven that those specific roads relative to other drivers on the roads, you're just as safe or 10 times safer than those drivers. And then people are going to say, yes, there should be robo-taxis driving around these roads. And it's still the same is going to apply. You move to snowy, wintry areas. You move to Canada, where I live, where we have a long, cold winter with lots of snow and ice. It's going to be proven not just summertime driving or other seasons, but it's going to be proven in all seasons, in all scenarios, in all these different data classes, that it's much safer. That once you can prove that, then it could be you could drive your robotaxi at all times. If it's not safe in the snow, then maybe only robotaxis they're not going to come to those geographic areas yet. So what I'm looking for and what I'm hoping for and what I'm not impressed with this data is that it's an apples to oranges comparison. This really doesn't tell you much about how safe autopilot is, because these are probably all one segment of specific miles, mostly highway miles, and this is all kinds of driving across the U.S. So the more they could actually have segments of different classes of driving, such as city driving, such as highway driving, such as different conditions in rain, in snow and ice, different conditions like that for each type of road, the more you can break that down and prove in each segment that full self-driving autopilot safer. Now eventually it's going to be full self-driving beta will be the next chart we have on here, is safer. Is, to me, that's really, really critical to show. But again, though, I want to finish off this video by also acknowledging I'm a huge Tesla fan, and I really believe Teslas are safer before the accident occurs, in preventing an accident, and also after an accident occurs. They also have in their report here, they talk about a little bit of the methodology. Just zoom in a little bit here. And they mention how Autopilot, all the data they're collecting includes Autopilot crashes that occur 5 seconds. Crash occurs 5 seconds after Autopilot is deactivated, which is a long time when you're driving, 5 seconds. So I'm assuming there's probably even some that people just, it wasn't necessarily Autopilot's fault, but are still included in there. And they also say that a lot of the police reports on the other side that they're comparing to are often, it's thought that a lot of those accidents are underreported, which would make sense. They're not going to report a fake accident as a police officer, but they would definitely skip accidents that might not actually get reported, then little fender benders and little bumps and things like that, which would be included on the Autopilot side. So again, I think Autopilot is going to be much safer. Also, 35% of the Autopilot crashes occur when Tesla is rear-ended. So in that case, they're not even their fault for over a third of the accidents. So again, I'm not saying that Teslas are not safer. I'm saying this data and this kind of comparison is bad and really doesn't tell us much. And I really wish Tesla would do better than this. And I hope somebody sees this. Even words of this sort of thought gets out to Elon and other people that run this, look for this kind of data from Tesla so that they can prove how safe they truly are. Love to hear from you guys. Let me know what you thought of this and how Tesla captures or compares their data for safety. Let me know in the comments down below. And if you got value to this, please consider subscribing to this channel for more content like this. Hit that thumbs up as well while you're at it. Really appreciate you guys for watching. And remember, it's in the bag. Cheers.